Greetings from the future. In this presentation, I had the opportunity to share the works of other scientists in molecular biology. The animations are from Drew Berry and also Harvard BioVision's Inner Life of the Cell. For the purposes of YouTube, there will be a couple places where there will be a link in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll need to click that in order to see their video while I narrate.
Today I'm going to tell you about the micro world of God's creation. It is unfortunately the best kept secret in science. There are no David Attenborough documentaries on this stuff, even though it's the most interesting thing in the universe, or at least I'm going to try and convince you of that. Alright, so this is our guiding verse here. It says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And this word fearful, I think, is appropriate. I've heard it described by other scientists as terrifying, even, how intricately we are made. So last week we talked about the stars. And one of the questions that comes up a lot when we see the vastness of the universe is, are we alone in the universe? Are we the only life? And we have all of these radio telescopes right now listening to the stars, and they do sing, but in a fairly naturally explainable way. And we have criteria for what would constitute signs of intelligence, for what would constitute a signal that showed that there was a mind behind that signal. And to date, no aliens so far. But what's ironic is that if you took those same criteria and looked at the code inside of your own body, if you looked around at nature, you would find ample evidence of a mind, an intelligence that put together all of these things, and that's what I get to show you today. So, as a bit of a sort of mental, imagine that everyone was debating about whether or not there was intelligent life out there, and a spaceship crashed on the Earth, and we went inside and found that the spaceship was made out of materials that we can't make. It had technologies that we don't have, holodeck and warp drive, and gravity generators, and all of these things. And furthermore, the spaceship was full of robots that were going about repairing the ship and getting it ready. Would that qualify as signs of intelligent life? Would that qualify that there's something out there besides us? This may sound absurd, but this is an understatement for what has actually already happened. So I'm going to show you some videos to really kind of put this in perspective, but I want to start with the size of one cell. So I'm going to be talking about cells. So that's a human finger, that's a grain of rice, and a cell is the size of one of these pixels. It's the size of a brush stroke, about the size of a dust particle of ground flour. So that's how small cells are. Everything you're going to see here is going to be inside of one cell. And to give you another sense of how small these things are, you're going to see all of these bumpy structures, and the bumpiness is caused by atoms. So each one of those little colored areas is one atom. You cannot make things smaller than this in our physical universe. This is as small as it gets. So I want you to keep an eye out for this guy. This is ATP synthase. This is critical for life. It's what gives you energy. And it's a turbine. So watch this, and I'll be quiet for a little bit and see if you can spot this. So what this structure is a turbine. So just like a water wheel or the Hoover Dam, these things take water pressure and turn it into mechanical motion. And it uses this to create fuel. Except instead of moving around large quantities of water, they're moving around protons. So almost elementary particles is what powers this thing. You cannot make a turbine smaller than this in the physical universe. So yes, every living thing has this. We share it in common with all of life because it's perfect. You can't make something better than that in our universe. So all these different little parts that you're seeing moving around, they're called proteins, and I'll sometimes refer to them as robots or machines, but they're called proteins. And so the way they work is you have a protein that has a particular shape, and its shape is its function. And then when you bring them all together, you get these larger structures where the shape gives the thing its function. So that's like a cage that gets put together. Okay, I'm going to show you one more, but this time I'm going to narrate over top of the video so that you can kind of get a sense of what's actually happening. So this video is about your white blood cells. So you have white blood cells that go through your blood, and they're there to keep you healthy. So they roll along the inside of your blood vessels. They do that using molecular Velcro. So they have this Velcro that causes a rolling motion, and while they're doing that, they're sensing what's on the other side of the blood vessel. So right here, now we're on the surface, this kind of skin of the cell, and it's getting a signal that there's something that it needs to address. So now we're inside of the cell, and that signal, you'll get to see, goes through the whole cell. So this is the structure that gives the cell its shape. It starts off as a cube grid, and then further in, there are these fibers that are powered by electricity. They use electrical charge to form wherever they need to go. Be a nice way to get to work. And then they can also be disconnected, and then they just come apart like Lego blocks, and they can be reused. So 100% recycling. These are the superhighways. They use the same process of assembly and disassembly, so you can have a road anywhere you want in three-dimensional space. Now this thing is real. What this is I'll just pause it for a second. What this is called a motor protein. So this is the mailman. So we've just built our highway, custom for made. This is the package, and it's a very efficient mailman. And these are what are going to be delivering the signals. This is a central control system for all of those highways. No one knows how it works. It's magic. I don't get it. This is the stuff that I study. This is RNA. So these are digital instructions. And these instructions, you'll see a reader attached to the instructions and begin making a new protein. So this is where they all come from. They use instructions and they make something, and then all of those combine together. This is a mitochondria. It's not a cell. This is inside of your cell. It's basically an organ inside your cell. So when the proteins are made, they can be dropped off into these little packets that go to the postal system. Yes, this is a postal system. Specifically, each one of these little bubbles is tagged with a postal code. I kid you not, there's an actual postal code system because the highways need to know where they go. So the motor protein is put on the right spot. This is the sorting system, so old packages come in through the bottom, new packages come out through the top, and this is on its way out. Okay. These are the newly manufactured anchors that were made in response to that signal. That's cholesterol right there, actually. And what they're going to do is they're going to reach up and grab the cell. So it's just manufactured some anchors. And they're going to grab the cell, and we'll see that allows the white blood cell to stop, and then it'll rearrange its whole skeleton in order to change shape. So this is a shape-changing, morphing thing. And that is how white blood cells crawl through your body. That's how they move through your body, and they can always be at the right place at the right time. They have the ability to manufacture new things fast enough that when they detect a signal, they grow new parts and latch on to something. That's what they do. So hopefully now the spaceship thing doesn't seem all that absurd. It's, like I said, kind of low-key. The spaceship can't make new spaceships. And doesn't violate the laws of physics to quite the same degree. So I found a couple of verses that I really like. I really like counting things, if you didn't get that from last week. So it says, how many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. So next time you see water, bread, literally any biological substance anywhere, just realize that the water is full of these little nanomachines. The whole world is full of it. And there's a great diversity, too. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And as you remember from last week, I tend to take phrases like, this is a challenge, so we're going to try and count these. So this is a different way of looking at protein. It's a way that shows kind of the internal structure a little bit more. So all of these are actual real proteins. And like I said, their shape is what gives them their function. Every protein has a different function. They have a hyper-specific task. And they need to be just so in order to do their job. No individual protein has wisdom or knowledge. It doesn't know what it's doing. But there is a genius behind the way that they all combine together to accomplish a task. That is, you being alive. And it's this kind of overarching intelligence, which is really amazing about life, this is how you go from non-thinking atoms to a thinking human being. And the diversity is really astonishing. I like that one. It's like a Mobius strip. So I did some math and tried to calculate how many moving parts you have in one cell. So these are generally about 340 letters long. They're about the same amount of information as in a tweet, but my tweets are not this potent. And I looked up the number of moving parts in a car, and it works out to be that about 20 of these proteins is the number of moving parts that you'd have in a car. So the proteins will, group together to form larger superstructures, kind of do a Voltron sort of thing, and it's about 20 of those to a car. So how many proteins do you have in one cell? That one tiny speck. It's so small you can't even see. It turns about 50 million cars. So the math for this is kind of hard to do. But we're within the order of magnitude of the number of moving parts in all of London. So that's every electronic piece, every car, every door hinge, all the machinery, every factory. That complexity is packed into one cell. And so imagine if someone came to you and said, we need the blueprint for all of London. We're going to make another one in New Zealand. And so would you please write down the complete instructions for how to build another London? And it needs to be exact, by the way. Well, that's what our cells do. And I find it remarkable that, like when Darwin was alive, they thought cells were just like some salts or something. People thought it was clay for a long time. But the Bible actually uses very specific language about life. It refers to it in a linguistic context. So John introduces God as the Word. That is the Greek word logos, meaning the logical word. And he says that it was through the Word that we were given life. And everything was created. Basically, there's a blueprint, there's the spoken word, and then that causes the rest of the universe to be made. And I love this phrase, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. So this is the way that all of that works. I study the word here. This is the word of life. And these are matched highlighting. So basically, each of these letters goes into making one of these little pieces. And so, if that letter is wrong, that piece will be in the wrong place. And so this ends up folding up. So this is insulin. So if any of you guys are diabetic, these are the words that are keeping you, well, technically keeping everyone alive, but these are the words that are critical to have right. And it's these non-highlighted areas that can sometimes cause a problem in something like diabetes. Okay. A couple other examples of this kind of linguistic language that's used. So shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty. It shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it. I love that phrasing because it's the word itself that goes out and does things. In Hebrews it says that God he created the universe by the word of God, and so that what is seen was not made out of the things that are visible. For he spoke, and it came into being. He commanded, and it came into existence. So the human genome, this massive blueprint for how to make one cell, it works out to be about 2,000 paperback novels. So it's about this much text that you're seeing on the screen here. And I was wondering how that compares to these micro SDs that are so small, I get them stuck underneath my fingernails. And so if you're thinking about, how does God's, information storage mechanism compare to something like DNA? So this is DNA here, and it's wrapped in spirals of spirals of spirals. It's a ridiculously long string that has to be packed up somehow. And unlike a yarn ball, you have to be able to pull out any piece of it in order to be able to read it. So this is what it looks like. And I calculated the density difference between a micro SD and DNA. Turns out you could take all of the files on all the computers in the entire world, the total computer storage capacity of the planet, and it would fit in a drop of water of DNA. That's how densely packed DNA is. You're basically using individual atoms, almost. And not the big drop of water here, it's this little guy here. Okay, so all of that gets packed into these volumes that we call chromosomes. So these are the largest molecular structures that we know of, actually. And so this is all one continuous long string that's been rolled up the way that you see. And these have to be handled very carefully. This is the word of life, after all. And so what you'll see here is that there's these same superhighways that we saw earlier, and they're being used to push and pull the chromosome because they need to go to the right cell, or else you have something like Down syndrome, for example. And you can see them being built right here. And this whole thing is actually a mechanical tension sensing mechanism, that it uses the mechanical tension to figure out where it is. And so in a second, things are going to start turning green because it senses the mechanical tension. And the way that it sends the stop signal is that things actually walk away down those highway fibers. And that's how mechanical this is. That's how it all works. And so in a second here, you're going to get to see these are all little clockwork guys that God has created. So ours are these big tall ones. They have tall legs so they can walk around other things. And they have a safety line because safety first. So that's what's going on inside your body all the time. There are millions of these, And actually your muscle fibers work in a very similar way. So, if everything is so amazing, why are we still dying? Why does my back hurt? Why do people get cancer? What's going on? When you study this, you're faced with these two titanic forces, the love and beauty and wonder that God has brought into the world, and also the decay and the weight of that decay. So, in Romans it says, for the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it. In context, this is Adam and the original sin. And the hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, right up into the present time. And we ourselves groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. So the body that you're having right now, it is this wonderful thing that God created, and then it's been subject to decay. We did not get a fresh copy, and Jesus promises to restore and I think upgrade our bodies. Which, actually, as a side note, when Jesus came back, he may have physically looked a little bit different, because some things about our physical appearance are because of the decay of the blueprints. You know, not my nose is not quite in the right spot, for example. So what's going on with something like cancer is that every single cell in your body has its own blueprint, its own copy. And when you get the copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, it begins to degrade and things begin to break down. It's just like the expiration date on food packing is you're not sure if it's good or not. So every genome, every cell comes with an expiration date. And when it hits that expiration date, the cell goes into a low power mode, which is designed to protect you. It will continue to do its job, but it will not grow, it will not replicate, it will not heal. And that is an important feature. Now, in cancer, what happens is the instructions that are supposed to read that expiration date, they get damaged. And so then the instructions continue to degrade, and like a mindless robot executing buggy code, they go off and start trying to do their job. It's not malicious, but they do it in a harmful way. And so that's what happens with cancer. And right now, you have 8 different defense layers against cancer. So it's not like our body is ignorant of this threat. But the magnitude is much greater than you think. Every second, there is one of your cells that's turning into precancerous. So it happens every single second. But those 8 layers of defense are enough that it has about a 1 in a trillion error rate. 1 in a trillion is terrifically good, by the way. Amazon doesn't have that good of an uptime. And so what that means is that about a third of us, or 2/3 of us, over the course of our entire lifetime, it will never happen to us. About a third of us, there will be one cell that gets through all 8 layers of defense, and that turns into a tumor. And that's where things start to go wrong. By studying biology, by developing medicine, we can add a 9th layer of defense. We can use our knowledge and sort of help the cells out. And we can help to reinforce God's original creation. And so here you can see this is a normal enzyme, and this is the mutant enzyme. And so if you look really closely, there's a tiny difference between the two. That's literally the difference between cancerous and non-cancerous. And those are the differences that slip past this clockwork genius. So I think that by Jesus' example, he pointed to what he was doing. He said, the blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. And then later he challenges us. He says, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. We are now in a time where we get to see the handiwork of God. We can see it manifest. We can study it and try to think God's thoughts after Him. To say, what have you done? This is amazing. And so we are in a position to start to do the things that Jesus was doing, and I think that's exactly what we should do. So that's what we're trying to do with medicine. So.